Right, so welcome to our webinar. This is a series, one in a series of webinars from the Regenerative Communities Alliance. We've done 3 prior to this, and then we'll have another one in November. This is something that the Regenerative Communities Alliance is doing to help educate and bring in people who are part of the communities movement and to help them network, connect, and learn about different things as part of the movement. So what we're going to talk about is the function of the Regenerative Communities Alliance, how it is associated with GEN and GENNA, and what kind of projects that we're working on.
Yeah, great. And a couple of little logistical tech housekeeping things. Since the first part of the webinar is mostly going to be presentation, we still invite folks to share thoughts or questions into the chat, which we can come back to in the second half, where we're going to be more conversational. So that's there. If folks, we should all have you all muted for now, or if you're in a quiet space, it's okay to be unmuted, but I may mute you. Everyone has the ability to unmute when the time comes for that. Yeah, hopefully folks are familiar with Zoom, and if you do have questions, you can pop them there in the chat, and the chat is under is on the toolbar there. All right.
All right, so this slide will tell us kind of an overview of what we're going to do. We're going to talk about the Alliance and its history. We're going to tell you about some of the partners and the different organizations that are involved with it. We'll talk a little bit about the organization, the major projects, and then how you can be a part of the Alliance.
All right, so we thought we would start with the vision that we came up with at one of the early gatherings of the forming of the GENNA Alliance, which is the Regenerative Communities Alliance. So we envision a world of interdependent cooperative communities stewarding the conditions of regeneration, justice, peace, and abundance in order to realize the full potential of flourishing for all life, for all generations to come. And so, just a little context on that, we sought to create a very inclusive vision, and our intent is to allow that to be very inclusive to other expressions of the regenerative movement and the regenerative communities movement, but what we've really been broadly identifying as that broader movement. So a little bit of the backstory, and for many of you this is review, so just tuning in around the acknowledgement of the Global Eco-Village Network and how that, with its more than 20-year history, has been part of the backbone for the formation of this alliance, and has been through the thousands of communities that are related in the 5 regional networks, of which GENNA is the Global Eco-Village Network North America. And here in North America, there are thousands of community projects that are organized under other organizations and other networks. And so part of our inspiration and effort with this is to help to create coherence and connectivity across these other networks. And that's how the Alliance has even come to be. So as was mentioned earlier, the Foundation for Intentional Communities, and some others that have been really long-standing for decades as a hub and an anchor for intentional community. So as we sought to make this bridge, the Global Eco-Village Network, along with FIC, and the other original partners, the founding partners for the Alliance. So a little bit about the GENNA Alliance and the Regenerative Communities Alliance is just to acknowledge that GENNA specifically is formed of the GEN constituent parts. So there's GEN US, there's the Forming Eco-Villages Canada, and there's Next GENNA. And the more broadly inclusive expression of the GENNA Alliance, which is the Regenerative Communities Alliance, is formed as a participatory commons of organizations within the communities movement. And that's the place where we are making that bridge to be inclusive to others, to add those into this broader, to this coalition and alliance. So both of the names essentially represent the same thing, while the alliance represents and includes more broadly. So just sharing one of the images of the many in-person alliance gatherings that was at Arcosanti in 2017.
Right, so when the GENNA Alliance was formed, there were 5 or 6 organizations that signed the original partnership agreement to say, we're going to create the GENNA Alliance. So that was Next GENNA, which is the youth branch of GENNA. There's New Mundo, the FIC, Village Lab, and then Gen US, and then also Eco Villages Canada. These are all the organizations that created the structure and started off the GENNA Alliance, which is now the RCA. So starting last year, the Alliance started to reach out to the network and encourage other organizations and individuals to join. So these logos are just some of the organizations that have people who are involved with the RCA, people who are interested in it, and people who are helping us with projects to make the Alliance more of a presence in North America. So these are the organizations that are represented, but we also want to emphasize that there's a way that individuals can work within the Alliance just as an individual person.
Yeah, great. And these represent, some potential partners with that intention very much of the that capacity for inclusivity. So part of what we engaged was this process for creating a visualization of the network, and we did a small Kumu map of that project. And the other image here is the image of the current network map of Now What, which is, as I had mentioned in the email that went out, and Mark is here as a member participant, as well as myself, 2 people that are here in a field trip from Now What, which is a global gathering that is doing a lot of network bridging. So I wanted to include this image because it shows what our intent is for how to strengthen and make the larger network visible. So in a very similar way, we will be making this broader expression and seeing how the network of networks pattern can exist across all these existing partners, from the founding partners to additional joining partners. And then even I like including this image because it shows individuals as well as organizations on the map. And this Now What project is a further development of the Thriving Resilient Communities Collaboratory, which is indicated on the prior slide as one of the potential partners. So just a little bit of weaving there, some network weaving of that intention. Okay, so as we have been working to share a bit of this purpose, and this would be some of the anchoring intention to showcase the North American projects and channel opportunities and resources into the region. Work as individual volunteers to generate projects, platforms, and initiatives, and maintain the sovereignty of each organization and the individuals to pursue their own missions while encouraging collaboration whenever possible. So a part of this pattern for breaking down the silos between different organizations and creating opportunities for synergy is at the heart of our work together, and especially for the opportunities to create generativity and meaningful value generation together within the broader network.
So to kind of explain what you do as an Alliance member, this slide says that you share the alignment with the purpose and the mission, which Kayla read at the beginning. So creating and connecting the communities movement together. We work collaboratively. We're all over the North American continent, so we use online tools and Zoom a lot to communicate. We balance the responsibilities that we have to our individual organizations along with our personal objectives. So we may represent an organization in the Alliance, but we also are working as individuals to work on projects or to help work on other things that the Alliance is doing. As individuals, we lead initiatives. So Kayla and I are part of the Strategic Development Committee Circle. There's a Stewardship Circle. So there's different ways that you can be a part and be a leader at the Alliance. We communicate regularly through email, phone calls, and Zoom. And we work toward the inclusion of marginalized populations. We recognize that the communities movement is mostly white, it's mostly middle and upper class. It's definitely centered in North America and the US specifically. So we're trying to extend our reach to indigenous communities, people of color, Black people, and other marginalized populations so that we can really represent the continent as a whole.
Yes. So this is the framing that we've been using to open into this imagining of a new way of doing things in this broader collaboration. So we've been calling it a participatory commons as an organizational framework with multiple levels of participation, organizing human effort and resources into purposeful endeavors where the multiple levels and types of wealth created by those endeavors benefit the universal commons while also allowing free agency of the participants to co-generate and share wealth of all types. And so with this frame of creating a participatory commons, that is our mission. And there really are some other, there are many others working towards very similar intentions in different formats. And some of that is decentralized autonomous organizations and many projects that are working on currency design and currency design for communities. So there's a lot that we are making space to collaborate for. And in many cases, it's about translation. It's about being able to find the language that is still inclusive. So a lot of our work with these online learning webinars and events is to help break that down and break down what these definitions are, what the implications of these projects are, and then especially how people can get involved, what language really works for their local community, how to really be able to strengthen both the bridging across different groups or different ways of saying things, but also within those groups as well. So that is a big part of our goal.
So next we have some quotes from two of the interns that worked with the Alliance last year. So Anna here is talking about the way that the Alliance is able to create connections between individuals and organizations. So because we are a participatory commons, we are encouraging people to reach out and to meet other people. When we met at Arco Santi last year, there were people who were from different movements, different communities connecting. We were all coming together and creating something bigger than ourselves. So that's really an inspiring part of what the Alliance is. All right, and so Hudson was talking, he's saying that he is seeing GENNA, which is the Alliance, becoming a hub for the communities movement. So FIC is a big part of the Alliance, and we have so many resources with FIC, including the Communities Directory, Communities Magazine, and their database of information. So FIC and GEN are contributing a lot to the Alliance, and then all the other organizations have things to contribute and have ways that we can kind of share resources and encourage each other and create movement within the Alliance.
All right, so we want to just share a little bit about the Alliance, both from the past, the present, and the future in terms of framing around some of the projects. And several of the projects are ongoing, and the data sharing is uh, a basically a protocol or a way of sharing a data structure for being able to share across communities and across different resources within communities. That's a bigger project, and it's been ongoing, and it is still under development. And part of that has represented work that FIC has been doing for years around the community's directory and some other versions of what that directory might look like, and especially what that looks like for creating ways to inroads or pathways for people to participate more easily and have access to information and resources in that way. We have a consultancy project, which is an association of community consultants from within within the Alliance, and that is evolving. There's also a consultancy relationship with GEN that we are exploring as the region as well. We have run an internship program in the past, which is very likely to be able to run again. We're orienting around that, and one of the projects where the internship program may show up is on site in eco-villages in North America, which we've been talking about some as well, as a way to continue that. And then events, part of the way that we even started the Alliance was through the opportunity to piggyback with other events for our gatherings, and we have been envisioning continuing to do that through more events, including an event in 2020. That being I'm weaving to the future with the way I'm sharing that. So yeah, so Crystal, do you want to share on these?
Yeah, so some of the things we've been working on this year, I mentioned the online learning series, which we've been doing for the past couple of months now. We've done a few, like one of the webinars was about diversity and equity. And then prior to, in the spring, we also did an anti-oppression training. So one of the focuses of the Alliance is to increase the diversity in the communities and acknowledge the contributions of diverse people in the continent. So yeah, so another thing we did was a gathering in the spring. We all met together in Portland and got some face-to-face time to work on Alliance business. And then one thing that Cynthia Tina, one of the GEN board members, launched this year was the North American Day of Sustainable Communities, hoping to kind of merge that with the European Day, and then next year have a worldwide Day of Sustainable Communities.
And then in 2020, we're anticipating continuing to especially move the online learning series forward, continue to do the network weaving and strengthening the relations of existing and new Alliance members. Part of the purpose of this presentation is to help launch that next step for people to really understand how we can bridge and activate both the existing and the new Alliance relationships. As I referred to earlier, that 2020 collaborative event, planning for a larger regenerative collaboration, and there may be there are a few seeds for where that might show up, and there's an invitation for more collaboration on that, as well as the data sharing and online platform, which designing and implementing a shared data source for networks and our communication platforms. There is a exciting potential that we'll be sharing about in an upcoming in the November webinar. It'll be shared as well around collaboration platforms and some of the partnerships that are possible for engaging a more seamless experience of the collaboration tools in one user interface, so that it makes it easier for people to engage who may have less of a technical background. That's often one of our collaborative dances, is how to use the technology to support on the ground projects, because we have on land and online learning and engagement of community. So we'll be, bridging that forward more as we go.
All right, so now we get to talk about how you can be a part of the Alliance. So the first thing we want people who are interested to do is fill out the interest form, which is a Google form, and we are going to paste that into the chat. So you can fill that out. It gives a little bit of information about your organization, if you're an individual, and then we'll reach out and get you started with the rest of the onboarding process. What you get to do right from the start is to join our monthly networking calls. So these calls are time for connection. We talk about some of the projects, and we get to do some personal interaction and kind of learn about each other and the work that we're doing. And then you also get access to our Google Drive, to the other technology tools that we use to collaborate. Like I mentioned, we use Zoom a lot. We do a lot of emailing and using Google Docs and communicating with each other. So you can get access to that and start jumping into a project.
Yeah, it's an exciting piece to have the technology tools be part of what folks are learning as they're getting on board. And the networking calls are also a really great opportunity monthly to share about the projects that you're working on and how you can get support from other folks in the network. So so then those next steps really with that onboarding is following through on the onboarding tasks, and then getting tuned in with the projects that we already have going, or especially too, we realize there are so many projects within the network that many of the collaborative potentials include people bringing projects that are either similar or bringing new projects. So it's an exciting part for us is to create more of that pathway for other people to participate and presence the other projects. Yep, and then formalizing individual and organizational participation in the Alliance is that step where we'll be strengthening that level of trust and those types of collaborations. Within the participatory commons model, a lot of that work happens through at different scales, and yet we have this really inclusive and empowering Alliance that we are stewarding together. So we welcome you to join us in that. So I think that Crystal may have dropped off the call just then. So as she makes her way back, this is the part where we are opening up for for questions. Basically, the process to questions about anything that we have showed so far. Linda, do you want to share? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. This was a great presentation. Thank you guys for putting it together, and I look forward to receiving the PowerPoint. And it makes me realize it would be great to do a companion piece on GENNA that brings out the the goals and the opportunities and activities involved there. And so that's something we can put on our project list, is to develop that and share more about GEN and all of its working parts, GEN elders, GEN ambassadors, who will be reaching out to soon to network more closely with, and also some of these potential partnerships as examples, like we're talking about with Next GENNA and the webinar series, and how we can collaborate on those, because they've been doing some great work too. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that and pin it for future action.
That sounds great, Linda. Yeah, and just to acknowledge too that we didn't this was not an exhaustive presentation of all of what's been going on in the Alliance. So it's a good one that can be added to as well. So the next, oh, and Crystal, good to see you back. And I see Audrey and Thumbs have their hand raised. So I'm gonna open that. Yeah, just let's hear from you.
Okay. Well, yeah, it was fun to have more information about the Alliance. Thank you for the presentation. And that's not what I was going to say, but Linda's intervention made me think that maybe it could be nice to also have a presentation of Next GENNA, but I guess at one point there's going to be too many members and it won't be possible to introduce them all. But maybe for now, I don't know. I'll let you see that. But if you want information, we could make one slide about Next GENNA or something.
Cool.
But my question was about the association of community consultants. That's like one of my dreams one day, to become community consultant, and I just wanted to know how that project works, where it's at, and what does it give to be part of the association. Does it exist yet? Is it like information, all that stuff?
All right, great. Well, thanks for that question, Audrey. And yeah, I think there's definitely room for a Next GENNA slide in here at this time, so that would be cool. I'll share a little bit on the consultancy, mostly to say that it's in development. The pathways to participate that I see that make a lot of sense for Next GENNA and for Gen US and like all the Gen-oriented organizations is to coalesce around a pathway for consulting in concert with Gen. And one of the ways that that's being talked about recently is, from what I understand, is a lot about education and consultancy being kind of a hand-in-hand aspect of the way that we do our work, which to me always makes a lot of sense because it's pointed in the direction of project-oriented learning and that sort of thing. But from what we've heard, and there will be more that can be shared on that, happy to know that you're interested, and we can probably do a webinar on the theme of collaborative consultancy or community consultancy, and definitely we can have a call with Jen and or some of the other consultants from the other regions too, because one of our patterns that's exciting is the opportunity to do more bridging between the regions, between and amongst the regions within Gen. So that's a great seed that you're watering there. So thank you for expressing that interest. And we have it. Oh yeah. Mark, we have your hand. Would you like to share?
I can pop this thing back on here. Yeah, this has been a particularly good presentation, for at least from my perspective, to see the level of interest in the number of things that are going on. But it also points very clearly to the number of diverse and disconnected groups that are all doing very, very similar things. As an example, I'll pull up my database. I have a couple of large groups who have been pulling together, as an example, qualified consultants for these kind of community developments that could mesh right in with the things that you're doing. One of the things that you mentioned that I'm quite interested in is, as an example, just doing these kind of things. We're crossing, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different technologies that are really obstacles for those that are non-tech savvy to essentially get involved at the level that we're trying to get people more involved in. So I'd like to throw my hand out immediately to say I'm fully prepared to help consolidate and bring together a lot of the technology pieces that you guys are trying to do. And I'm very excited to hear what the rest of the organization's doing. I'd like to hear more about your database and where you are on sharing information there and what it might look like. So I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mark. That's exciting to have you joining in and sharing resources and interests that way. And I guess I'll share quickly on the database project. Adam McKenty is one of our Alliance members that's been stewarding a project to explore how that how in specific the interoperability of the data sets and the data that's currently held by FIC, of the Foundation of Intentional Communities, and then GEN, the Global Eco-Village Network, and New Mundo, another of our platform partners that has a lot of distributed centers and impact centers, as they are called, and those are different places for people to go and learn or stay, and many of those are in Central America, South America, and around the world, really. So New Mundo is one of those other platforms. So the interoperability of that data set and that project, Adam would probably be the point person that I would loop you in with, and or if the regular calls are happening again, there's been a monthly call on that data project within the Alliance. So that could be a great place to help plug you in. Yeah, thank you. And Rob, we have your hand if you want to share.
Thank you. Let me see if I can put the video on. Yeah, I wanted to mention 4 things that you might be interested in pursuing. And I'm pretty much overcommitted in my life, but I would be more than happy to support these GENNA being involved with these things if there's interest among other people to pursue it. The first is I serve on the advisory council for the Earth ecosystem restoration camps. And the camps have some pretty happening projects in California right now. So Jen is a partner in the Ecosystem Restoration Camps Initiative, and I represented on the advocacy, on the advisory council. And I'm on the listserv for the California group. Leora Adler from Gaia University, who's one of the GEN founders, is also on the advisory council and is involved with that project. So potentially they could join, be a part of RCA and the GENNA. The second is every year I go to the United Nations. There's a high-level political forum on sustainable development that happens in July. Andrea came 2 years ago, and other people from North America came this last year, one from Ithaca and one from Canada. So if you wanted, GENNA could be more involved with what's happening at the United Nations and could represent the ecosystem, the GEN at the United Nations and GENNA at the United Nations. So that's an opportunity if anyone wants to be a part of that. Also, GEN is developing a impact assessment survey. We started with something that Linda Joseph had been put together, which was a community survey and guidelines and a questionnaire. And now it's become an impact assessment, and it's one of GEN's main tools for showing the contributions we're making to addressing climate change and resiliency and regeneration. So I'm wondering if GENNA has got any of the eco-villages are a part of that. We're supposed to be showcasing 100 eco-villages from around the world. So that should be something that GENNA would be part of and would highlight some things that are going on in eco-villages in North America. What was the last one? I guess I'll have to come back to me on that. I forget.
Well, thank you. Thank you for those. Yeah. And I think, yeah, we had heard of a couple of those, but that was really good to get them in this space now because there's, some of it is about next steps. So we are taking some notes, and of course there's the recording. So some of this is a chance to anchor in, next steps that some of us would take. And
I'll put my email in the chat, and if anyone wants to follow up on any of these, just send me an email. I'd be happy to join a Skype call or Zoom call or whatever.
Rob, it's Linda, and I'll definitely follow up with you. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think it could be great, Rob, to have a call with Crystal and I in terms of the Alliance strategy too. It'd be good to just touch base. So we've been reaching out to different folks that have been involved over the years, and it's been great to get input. So maybe we could plan a call for that too.
Yeah, we've been aware of the impact assessment, and we have the list, the previous list of showcase eco-villages, and so we're planning a strategy to reach out to eco-villages and start getting ready for that impact assessment to help update GEN's records and also showcase diverse communities across North America.
Wonderful.
Yeah, a big key with that, and this ties back to the data point, or the data conversation, many data points, right? But is the context of how to keep data current. So in a lot of these different directories or systems, the information is outdated, and we have this opportunity with a lot of the different data that we have on communities, and especially when it comes to the showcase eco-villages, both the existing ones or the ones that are up and coming, or even ones that want to be proposed, you know, where we have that type of movement. And that got me thinking a little bit to some of what Mark, what you shared when you intro, because it sounds like you have a background in community development as well, which is, you know, a whole other important alliance to be able to make, especially around, you know, from making the bridges from basically everyone that's already engaged, and then especially to retrofitting of communities towards more ecological capacity. And there's definitely a lot of work, you know, that's using the Sustainable Development Goals at least as a frame, or a you know, a frame of reference. And so the impact assessment tool, things like that, it's great to get that in the shared awareness and have those resources out. Does anybody feel called to share anything else, or just bounce back? We can move into a kind of conversation as well.
Yeah, I remembered. Someone mentioned that there's interest in reaching out to some of the other continents, the other GEN networks. And I wanted to tell you that I'm on the planning committee for our participation in the climate summits. And this year it's in Chile. And we've been having phone calls with Zoom calls with our Latin America organizers from a number of countries down there. So if anyone's interested in what GEN is doing with climate summits and would like to talk with people from Latin America that are engaged in that process, it would be more than welcome to join our calls. Just let me know that you would like to join that, and I'll forward the information to you. We'll probably have 2 or 3 calls between now and December for the planning process for this. Down in Latin America, there's a lot of interest in the rights of Mother Earth, in heritage seed saving, and regenerative efforts focusing on climate in general.
Well, if there's anyone else that wants to chime in with any thoughts, I did think it would be good to just briefly make a loop around to the Now What opportunity, because this is an experiment where it worked out that Mark has joined us from a partner field trip within Now What, which is a global gathering that's more in the form of a pop-up, but it's a type of pattern that will be recurring. So I can drop the link for people to learn more about Now What in the chat too, as far as a cross-pollinating piece. And there will be opportunities for the deep dive conversations that are happening there, and some of the other cross-pollinating and network weaving functions that are being served by that project too.
I have a question.
Go for it, Audrey.
So last time we talked about it was a couple months ago, and I don't know if it's changed. I know that there's the GENNA Google group, the Regenerative Communities Alliance Google group, where like emails are exchanged. Who's included in there? Like which level of participation is that? And is there a level of participation that's just for like learners? So not like internal members of the Alliance, but like external members that, for example, would just want to attend the learning series, something like that, that we can share, for example, to our daisies? Or is it still just the Google?
Yeah, right now there's just one Google group mailing list, and that has all sorts of people who are connected in some way to the Alliance. So it's not specifically for people who have been onboarded and are participating in the Alliance. It's just basically a list of people who have been in contact with the Alliance. We also have a separate list of people who have attended the webinars and people who are more interested in the Alliance activities. So that list is probably where we would make the announcements about the online learning series. The Google Groups is online learning series plus Alliance Business, the monthly networking calls. So it's a lot more frequent emails, but we do have a separate one where we can reach out specifically to people who've attended the webinar or are interested in the online learning series.
Where can I find that?
That's a good question.
So
I would have to download it from Eventbrite and then put it in a Drive folder somewhere.
well, yeah, and
How do we become like part of that list? What do people do to be in there?
Okay, so to get on the list for the webinars, you register. And while we did make this link available without registering, that's one of the easy ways to get your name on that list. And then for, I've been exporting that list into, so there is a database of the registrants for the different webinars. But just on the topic, the broader topic of the communication channels, we didn't, and yeah, thank you for muting, but feel free to chime back in after this. But the piece that we've been working on that I'm excited about, and I guess I'll name that potential partner, which is the Dig Life, the Digital Life Collective at diglife.coop or diglife.com. They have a portal that they've been working on, which is a CAS, which is Collaboration as a Service. And so within that interface, the project is that we will have our own portal for the Regenerative Communities Alliance, and then there will be a deeper dive into participation through that space, access to the shared documents, access to the shared calendar, access to the chats and the conversations that are happening there, and it will have that quality of having more of those things in one place. It will also have a network map of all the people in the Alliance there, and so we had talked a little bit about whether or not to do a presentation of what that would look like, and or to go deeper into the onboarding resources that Crystal and Jamaica and myself have spent the last couple of months working on a little bit more, which list out some more of the steps and the levels of participation that we foresee happening. Yet we're also really making space for an organic emergence of some of that, particularly when it comes to collaborative endeavors, collaborative potentials. So the big piece is that currently that group, the Google group that you're already part of, and if folks want to be added to that, let us know. But also if you do fill out the form, the brief form that was included in the presentation and shared in the chat, then that will also get you a chance to be added to that list. So, and then if Audrey, you want to be able to send out for the other events you're planning and such too, we can coordinate around how to get the word out.
Okay, so I guess I can, if I share because there's not always a webinar, and there's not always, like, people might not want to fill the form because they don't really want to become a member. So I'm still unclear on what to share, but
oh
yeah.
So to be on the list for the webinars, is that what you're saying? And we can
Yeah,
always,
or anything else that happens, but that is not a meeting, kind of.
thanks, Mark. It looks like you're signing off, so thank you. Yeah, Audrey, it sounds like we can probably dial this in with either a little further conversation after, but I think currently if folks want to come to the webinars, they register for a webinar, and that's the step. And I guess you could possibly add someone else's email to the registration for a webinar, and that would get their name into that list. But we can also create a different, I think what you're talking about is having a different database for the more general public that we might be reaching out to. So that's a good conversation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. We can talk more about that for sure. And it looks like Dale has do you have your hand raised? You want to share? And you are muted.
Thank you. I'm not very familiar with a lot of this technology, and I don't know how to pull off that the address or whatever to get the form, to fill the form out. So can you tell me about that?
Sure. So the form link, so maybe I didn't hear the question properly, but I'll answer it first so you can just tell me. So when you click on that link, it should represent a Google form that you can just fill in your answers to and then hit return. And then that will submit your info to us about your interest.
All right.
I think you're probably on the phone, right?
Oh, is that the problem? I'm on a phone and
Yeah, you're gonna have to try and swipe to the chat, and then it should be highlighted in the chat.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think I can come back later maybe and pick that up. Okay. Thank you.
Well, it'll drop off. You'll need to have someone email it to you. The chat disappears after the call.
Okay.
That's true. Yeah, and I can Dale, I can email you that form link. And
Thank you.
we'll create and also just for the sake of the recording, if anyone else did not get the link when it was up on the screen or paused to record it, you can email GENNA@ecovillage.org and request that interest form, and we will send it off to you, and we can answer all of your questions there too, additional questions. And then we've also on this last slide here included both Crystal and my emails as well if you wanted to reach out to us directly. So we can send the form and or answer questions that way. Thanks, Dave.
Kiala, there's two more things that I could mention that will become probably more important over the years to come. The UN has adopted a UN resolution on ecosystem restoration, the UN decade. So this will continue over the next 10 years, starting in 2020. I attended a summit meeting just last month by the Global Landscape Forum during the summits on the UN summits. So, this is an initiative that civil society is more than welcome to participate in. The Global Landscape Forum is pretty developed. There's 10,000 people or more that have participated in their events around the world, many of them representing individual organizations. So I expect that we'll have a Democratic president after the next year, and that there'll be a big focus on ecosystem restoration and efforts to do regenerative development and draw down carbon out of the atmosphere. And I live just 2 hours from Washington, D.C. So if that happens, I will be attending some meetings there in Washington, D.C. I'd be happy to represent the Alliance at those meetings, as well as to put out the word about anything that's happening with the Alliance. And the same thing with UN meetings. I imagine that periodically from time to time as the decade goes forward, things will happen in New York, and I will try to attend those events. So I'm happy to provide a liaison between the two.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, it's great to have you joining the Alliance more formally, more officially. It feels great. So great to have you here and all those connections that you're bringing. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, the regenerative development at the United Nations includes more than just focusing on the natural environment and the, reforestation, etc. It goes into wetlands, into ocean and also agriculture, and looks at agroforestry as well as agroecology and organic agriculture. So there's some very strong links with what happens in intentional communities and eco-villages in other dimensions as well, in terms of regenerative development.
Well, so that's great. That's a great resource. Well, yeah, it's been really great to have this time and to get a chance to share the latest version of the webinar. One idea in terms of if there are any, just other like questions or last things that folks want to share, or we could do just a brief closing round, or it doesn't even have to be brief. We could do it that way, just to hear from folks if there's any last thoughts. And I will start it off and just say that I'm like just thrilled to get the chance to share and also have folks showing up and feel the bridging and connecting that's happening in the networking and in the co-inspiration of the work that we're doing. So grateful.
Yeah, I feel really inspired by all the potential partners, and I feel the same when I see all those like organizations that do things that overlap, and I'm like, they should talk together. And now I get the feeling that's what the Alliance is doing, like connecting them. So that feels really good. And I'll be happy to share if there's the recording of this meeting and I happen to meet people that are interested by the Alliance, like share it with them. And I took a note to find a way in next GENNA to clarify who would be in charge of sharing all the things that we see about the Alliance. So we'll try to clarify that between ourselves and try to be on top of that because it's really inspiring. Check.
Yeah, this is Linda. I'm really glad I was able to be here. It's just very exciting that to feel the Alliance sort of turning from its inner development state to really becoming active outwardly more now in so many ways, as we've heard today. And thanks, Kayala and Crystal, for putting this together. I think it's great to have these kind of gateway introductions like we're hearing from Audrey. How can we communicate this to that even larger group that may not show up for webinars but are already connected somehow and would like to understand better. So thanks.
I'll say I'm also excited about reaching out to the wider communities movement and meeting other people. I've been involved with the Alliance for about a year, And it's been interesting to see all different people working on it and to see different projects that are going on. So I'm excited to keep connecting with people and meeting people.
I really appreciate, similar to like what Linda said, the sense of the growth from organizing inwardly to moving outward. And thank you very much. I've enjoyed just participating and trying to stay up to speed with what's happening. Thank you.
Well, I'll go. This is Rob. And I want to say I think it's really exciting that this is happening, and GENNA's really starting to come together now. It's been quite a number of years where it's been sort of dormant, and we've missed that connection between GENNA International and what's going on in North America. So it's exciting that this linkage is being formed. Also, I'm really encouraged to see the relationship between the Fellowship or Foundation for Intentional Communities and GENNA start to become stronger and to get that interlinkage. I think it's really important for the movement to have that happen. So thank you, those of you that have made a commitment to this and have been stewarding it.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks everyone so much. And as a reminder to folks that may be watching the recording, if you want to join up to more of the webinars or find out more, any information of, that you've picked up through this presentation, you can email GENNA@ecovillage.org, and Crystal or myself will respond, and we can go from there. And much inspiration if folks are seeing this in real time or close to real time. The Now What 2019.com is another place to weave. So stay tuned, everyone, and hope to see you at our next webinar. Thanks so much, everybody. And we'll just open up the mics and say bye, everybody. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Now what?